Welcome to today's New England HIMSS webinar provided by premier sponsor OutSystems. Digital Innovation in Healthcare, Life Sciences and Pharma, How High Performance Low Code is Accelerating Modernization Across the Healthcare Ecosystem, presented by Luis Giraldo, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Digital Innovation. And he's joined by Sean Mee, Regional Vice President, Solution Architecture, both with OutSystems. With 20 plus years of success spearheading business and technology solutions that accelerate digital transformation, helping grow market share and improve customer retention strategies, Luis has provided successful global consultative value selling to the C-suite executives on modern technology and best practices to increase revenue, efficiencies, and risk mitigation while accelerating digital solutions to market for customers. In addition, Sean leads all solution architecture teams for OutSystems across the Americas. In his role, he equips his solution architects to provide technical expertise to prospects throughout the sales and technical evaluation process. He comes to OutSystems with over a decade of consulting and software engineering experience from a variety of organizations. Please remember, all lines are muted today upon entry, and send all your questions via the Q&A feature. And please join me in welcoming Luis and Sean today.
Thank you so much, Elisa. A pleasure to be with all of you. Appreciate everyone carving out a little time during the lunch hour. So hopefully you can sit back and enjoy your coffee or your lunch and hopefully get some value from the session today. So I have the pleasure to be accompanied by Sean Mee. So we're going to talk a little bit about how OutSystems is helping support redefine care delivery and really drive more connected healthcare ecosystem. So without further ado, I'll kind of jump in and share with everybody the agenda that we're planning to cover today. And to note, we are going to have some integrated poll questions, very simple, just 3. So we won't overburden you with too many, but 3 just to get a pulse from the audience today, because I think that's important. But what we'll plan to cover is really the evolution of digital landscapes. And so what are we seeing, both Sean and I, across our customers and really the market, and what's driving this adoption of low code or rapid application development. And then we'll get into a bit more around those customer solutions that are powered by OutSystems to really give you a look, a feel, and maybe some breadth around how organizations, payer provider, pharma, bio, life science organizations are redefining that care delivery for their constituents. And then we'll get into a little bit under the hood, not too much from Sean's perspective. He'll walk you through a bit of the full stack application development capabilities that our platform brings to bear. And then next steps will provide some opportunities for you to explore further, whether that's in the form of a demonstration or some key assets that many of our customers and prospects look at when evaluating the platform. So I wanted to go ahead and start on a little different note because I think this is important. So I'm going to play just a 3-minute video to really highlight just one example of how OutSystems modern application development platform is supporting really the innovation within healthcare. So I'm going to go ahead and put the video on and then we'll jump right into some more of the background.
Prostate cancer is the most diagnosed cancer in Australia. Over 200,000 cases are diagnosed every year, and over 2,500 men will die from prostate cancer within Australia every year. Those living in rural Australia with prostate cancer are significantly disadvantaged due to their ability to access care due to distance. Prosmate particularly was designed to address this need.
One of our customers is the Australian Prostate Centre. We have delivered an application for them called Prosmate. It's really about changing the lives of men diagnosed with prostate cancer and their families.
At the time of its design, Prosmate was one of the first interactive tools to help a patient with prostate cancer. We designed it from the ground up with medical expertise and also strong patient feedback.
Our challenge was to develop a secure, patient-centric platform that also catered to the clinicians.
I specialise in looking after men with prostate cancer and their partners, and Prosmate is one of the very valuable tools we use to get information out to these men.
Prosmate needed to be easy to use, enable video conferencing, and support content management, and provide new functions such as a clinician portal to help capture important medical information.
What Prosmate provides is a direct portal for a patient to consume authoritative information to guide them through their journey. And in addition to that, it then incorporates an ability to do a telehealth consultation, something that many other systems can do, but not in one application.
I haven't been here for a while, and it's really good to get on the video and have a chat.
By integrating key technologies with the world's leading low-code platform OutSystems, we were able to deliver Prosmate in months, not years.
We know with prostate cancer, many men can sit there in silence and suffer. What Prosmate really provides is a very personal tool for them to interact, gather information, and then provide questions back to their primary carers or back into the allied health team that we have from a telehealth perspective. So if we can help in that journey and open that up, we know information is power. That can really help with the anxiety levels and ultimately help with the treatment of that patient.
I think it's a great format because you can keep your relevant information and collate it all together and follow the trends that are happening in your own situation as you go. Yeah, I think it's sensational.
What's really rewarding is seeing the actual outcome that delivers a positive, material, tangible benefit to people.
Prosmate is cutting edge. It's a complete package for patients. It's not done elsewhere, and I think it's absolutely fantastic.
In these times around COVID, we can blend our delivery of healthcare between telehealth through Prosmate and also providing that face-to-face reassurance. We think we can make a big impact on men on their journey.
We're actually changing people's lives.
All right. Well, thank you for participating in that video a little bit longer, but it's good. Hopefully you can get a sense really from a customer's perspective and one of our delivery partners of how they're leveraging the platform to really impact the lives of folks in delivering remote care. So as we kind of move forward into the presentation here for the next 40 minutes or so, what Sean and I are going to walk you through are really starting with some trends that we're seeing that are driving the adoption of the platform to support those patient experiences, as you mentioned. But really, how do you think about you as practitioners and as leaders within your own IT organizations and business functions to make that shift to innovation, and how low-code application development platforms like OutSystems are driving not just the patient experience, but productivity, streamlining operations, and really improving care with enhanced analytics. And so we're going to walk a little bit through some market trends that I think that are important as context just briefly, and then we'll get into some more solutions, not just what you saw there for Prosmate, but for others globally that we're providing. So I think, as many of you are aware, that low-code application development is a byproduct of simple supply and demand. There's a shortage in talent, and then there's a hyper focus on speed to market, as well as flexible cloud development frameworks to support burning down application backlogs and really launching new products. And more importantly for all of you, of how do you drive different initiatives in and outside of the hospital, whether you're a payer provider or whether you're a pharma or biotech or life science organization. So we have examples of all those, but really what we're seeing is that there's a massive increase in adoption, of which Gartner states that 70+% of development by 2025 will be coming from application development on low code. And so then that whole concept of composability, when you think about flexible architecture to support continuous change and integration, is going to be essential. So how do you have, maybe if you have a small IT organization, how do you become more nimble and actually do more with what you have, or potentially with less? And so really it's those three areas that we see that are driving, again, the adoption rates that you saw previously in the market. From a compound annual growth rate is growing over 20% year over year. But it's really extending the core capabilities beyond some of the core IT members. So how do you get analysts and other business functions and operators to maybe support that development effort? But automation is key. I think regardless of industry, you think about automation everywhere to really drive efficiencies and reduce, for instance, in your context, physician burnout, improve more of the cross-care team collaboration, And that's super crucial, as obviously we saw with the pandemic, of how do you utilize your resources, staff augmentation, and affordable care delivery at scale when the demands are out there. And so composable business, I mentioned, is really how do you leverage the Epic, the Cerners, the HL7, other core systems within your ecosystem, and bring in something like OutSystems to help drive better integration and really ultimately deliver a better experience for your patient, your members, and your physicians and care team overall. And Sean's going to talk a little bit about that further on as far as some of those differentiated capabilities that the platform brings, but just wanted to touch on some of that as background. So I'm going to walk, before we launch the first poll, I'm going to walk a little bit of that background before we go into those customer solutions that are powered by OutSystems. But, you know, without going too far back in time, we know that there's, you know, in the 90s, there was the initial focus on the monoliths, right? With your big ERP, CRM, HCM, HR installations. And then was this massive proliferation in the 2000s around SaaS. And so what we're seeing as a result now in current day is that there's a SaaS sprawl, for lack of better terms, where there is no shortage of options that all of you have out in the market, whether it's healthcare specific or industry standard, to drive innovation. And so the technology stack is becoming even more complex. The backlog is growing day over day, and the demands, frankly, for all of you as leaders and all of us to support digital, you know, transformation and acceleration is becoming increasingly difficult, and to do it cost effectively. So this concept of moving from now into what we call this evolution of digital landscapes and really an agile cloud development framework is what brings us into the conversation of low-code application development. It's clear that with low code, there's a lot of saturation in the market. There's over 250 players, so not all low code is created equal. And hopefully we're here to kind of differentiate why we feel like we're in a strong position to support many enterprise organizations and healthcare organizations alike. But it does come down to this concept of build versus buy. And I'll touch on a couple of items and then pass it over to Sean to provide his perspective. But we know that there's a dilemma that all of you have around building versus buying solutions. But regardless of what you choose and what percentage is off the shelf or you do with traditional development, we know that if you're looking to build applications, that OutSystems does put you in a position of driving that in a more accelerated fashion with continuous integration and development and scale that does provide a very consistent pixel perfect experience. And so what you saw in Prosmate, and which we'll share with you in some of the solutions, is the ability to really take the existing investments you have, build quicker, and build consistently while driving quality assurance around the code that you're developing, because we know things will always be changing. And so what you saw previously as the challenge around the SaaS sprawl, it's hard to customize and have those different technologies speak to one another. And what we would like to kind of make sure we emphasize through the session today is it's really around that coexistence strategy, how OutSystems can become that integration layer with that front-end experience for whether it's a physician, a nurse, the patient, the member, a hospital care management ecosystem, and deliver really that web or mobile experience that they deserve, right, to drive more affordable care delivery. So what we're talking about here is really how do you build at scale quickly and have that be integrated as with all the investments that you've made today. Sean, I don't know if you have comments.
I think it's a very, very important point. This ability to be agile and flexible and responsive to changing business requirements, and that I think is one of the true value propositions of a low-code platform like OutSystems. The ability, for example, to be able to turn around new requirements and deliver digital products in a very, very short time frame. And I know you mentioned, COVID, and we certainly heard about it in the video piece, the demands that put on health tech. And we've got customers who were able to spin up, patient portals, customer portals, find a injection clinic for vaccines and whatnot in record time using OutSystems. And what's crucial, I think, in addition to that agility and ability to build, is to do it in a secure hosting environment. A really important consideration is, in the move to cloud, can we remain compliant with our obligations under HIPAA and under data privacy and data protection? And so when we look at a platform like OutSystems, that ability to provide that regulatory compliant hosting environment is a critical part of the mix as well, which OutSystems is able to provide.
Great, thank you, Sean. So without further ado, we'll just do a little pause here. And Alyssa, if you could launch the first poll for the folks in the room. And I'm not one for brevity, so these were my questions, but have a look, please, and we'll give it just about 30 to 45 seconds or so for you to respond. Right, see them coming through, so thank you for your responses. Right, I think we've got what's 6 of the 11. We'll give it just about 10 more seconds and see if people finish their bite of their last sandwich or of their meals. All right. So yeah, so I think this is pretty common of what we see. So I think the shortage of talent is definitely one element, as I mentioned earlier, democratization of as to why many organizations within healthcare and outside of healthcare are adopting platforms like OutSystems, and that the build versus buy construct and how to think through that. And so hopefully we'll walk through some more examples that give you a sense of that, and we're going to get into some of those specific themes that help you understand, if you're going to build, how to bring OutSystems into your technology stack. So as we go into the challenge, right? And just wanted to confirm you can still see my screen. I know we've got the poll, but you still able to see my screen, Sean? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we sure can.
Okay. So I mean, some of the things is the growing backlog. There's a proven solution, big tech, high code. What do I think about? And so the questions that I'm sure many of you are being asked is agile ways of working, as Sean alluded to and touched on, and the pace of delivery is getting quicker and higher demands. Security has to be integrated throughout, and then how do you reduce these silos that have always been present? So I think there's been a lot of focus around this, and so part of what we're going to kind of walk through today is a little bit of how and what really OutSystems can help and support. So as you think about, when you leave this webinar here in the next 40 minutes, what are some of the ideas that you can go back and begin to explore and experiment potentially on a platform like OutSystems? So there's 3 primary areas that you'll see in the customer solutions that we provide, which is really customer-facing applications and portals. So when you think about that, that's out to the patient, as you saw with Prosmate, out to the care clinician. And so really it could be a website, or it could be mobile applications that are providing some level of digital services. And what you saw in Prosmate as an example, which you'll see in some of the other examples, is this is not only telemedicine, but it's patient portal, it's with content management. It's also the interaction between the physicians and the healthcare ecosystem. And then those customer facing applications and portals, also we see a lot of internal corporate functional areas that are equally as important as we think of the new way of working in the hybrid environment. How do we support those that are on site or those that are remote workers across your teams to be more effective in the jobs they do every day? So think about all of the different things, such as HR onboarding, such as front, middle, back office, applications, there's a lot of emphasis there to try to drive efficiencies and reduce costs, but also retain employees, right? And retain and improve the way of how we work today, given some of the limitations we have. And then core systems and services, which is, what we'll talk a little bit further as well, is how OutSystems is not a rip and replace strategy. It truly is a complement to your current investments and how we interact with some of the core systems like the Epics, the Cerners, and others. So a lot of work being done there to continue to integrate and build and evolve and really be an accelerator for the healthcare ecosystem. So those are the three typical areas we see. And you think about use cases, there's no shortage of use cases that I think are possible out there. But when we think about the value chain, this is just a good sort of example of some of those use cases across our thousands of customers that OutSystems is helping address. And so, as I mentioned, it's what we see often is, again, telemedicine, patient portals, but also hospital care management, inventory management, and other things that really would drive a kind of more connected omni-channel experience. And so having that consistent web and mobile and the flexibility of those applications for different constituents, and knowing that those will be continuously changing, right? So that's a big thing when we look at what Sean's going to touch on later, is the agility is crucial in that it's not just the cost and the solution that you build up front, but it's how you manage that, maintain it, support it in an ongoing fashion. So I'm going to highlight a couple of I'll play a video a little bit later on. I think that might be useful, but just a couple of customer solutions that I think are meaningful. So back to sort of the first one, which is customer facing or patient/agent facing portals. Humana has been a customer of ours for a number of years, and they've done a number of different applications, of roughly 10 or so. One in specifically around facing more to their agents and building in sort of test locators for COVID and driving that experience. So they basically took sort of a spreadsheet and built an application in several weeks, not months, to generate this, to really create that experience to drive more efficiencies and more visibility and an overall better experience for folks that are getting tests. So that's one example with Humana. A large cancer treatment center here in the Americas that I work with personally was able to actually, during the pandemic, they did not have a telemedicine portal in place, and within 4 to 5 weeks or so, we were able to take what was 0 appointments done through telemedicine to hundreds of thousands. And so building off of that, we've done patient portals for this organization and looking to explore other integrations into core systems as well. So just, again, giving you a sense of the business benefits and then some of the features and the capabilities that the solution provides. US Acute Care is another one, as we talked about, which is a good sort of combination of what you saw earlier. So in those 3 cases, with the customer facing portals and applications, internal applications and core systems, they really tackled their modernization with the customer facing as well as the internal applications. So we're seeing many organizations in and outside of healthcare that are looking at tackling internal pieces as well as the consumer facing. So it does really end up being, where do you want to focus where are the priorities, and where do you need that consistent on brand experience? And so really that will dictate most of where we start with many clients, and there's generally a walk run type format. But in this case, many organizations that are tackling highly mission critical customer facing or member facing applications. And while doing so, they're also driving significant efficiency gains internally on just trying to streamline internal operations. The last one here, just to give you kind of a sample set of some of the solutions, is really with Medtronic. There's a number of, they're continuing to expand across a number of different areas within their business. If you think back to some of the highly mission critical applications that are being, leveraged by OutSystems, here's a digital heart monitoring and triage service. So, think about life-saving, think about the criticality of different workflows that are happening inside the hospital across a number of the constituents to either prevent surgery or, in this case, monitor, track, and manage critical aspects of a patient's physical and mental well-being. So I'm just going to provide a quick little video on Medtronic, just because I think it's nice to kind of incorporate some of the perspective from the customers and who we're working with. So I'll play this. This is just as a kind of a minute video, if not slightly less, on Medtronic and what they're doing with OutSystems.
So we are using OutSystems for different groups and different needs. So indeed for patients even, or HCP or nurses. So HCP is our healthcare providers. So we actually have a multitude already of solutions built in OutSystems. OutSystem gives us the flexibility to be able to be faster to deliver to the market and create that unified experience that is so important, right? To actually create that user satisfaction and user-friendly way of working.
So with that, I think it's probably worth, Alyssa, if you can launch maybe the second poll, just to get an idea from the audience, and as far as what are some of the areas they're focused in on.
All right. Not there.
There we go.
That's the first poll question again. So
yeah, it's okay.
Why did it do that? It had us all three before. I apologize. For some reason, it showed all three before, and now it's only allowing me to have the first poll. I apologize, Louise.
That's okay. That's no problem. I think there's let's see here.
Hold on, I got it. I got it. Nope. I figured there's a little new addition. Okay, there we go. Launching. Is it out there? Not launching. I'm hitting launch, but it's not launching. I apologize.
That's okay. We can move on. I think there was a question in the chat. I don't know, Sean, do we want to take that now? Or?
Absolutely. Pat Sutton asks, have we found a way to make the patient portals more attractive to patients, right, to increase utilization and uptake? And I want to say absolutely yes. A core part of the OutSystems value proposition is to easily create pixel perfect user experiences and user interfaces. And so we can extend and build upon some of the out of the box default capabilities that you get with an Epic or get out of the box with a pre-configured off the shelf health platform. And on top of that, create differentiated workflows, differentiated experiences that are very attractive and very consumer grade. And we allow you to do that typically at a kind of a productivity rate 5 to 7 times higher than creating those patient experiences using manual tools and high code and manual processes. And I'll show you during my presentation exactly how we deliver those pixel perfect UIs through a palette of wonderful UI controls and abilities that you can drag and drop onto your application canvas to create those differentiated user experiences and flows. So great question, and I hope to show you that during my slideshow with some specific examples.
Great. Thank you, Sean. So we'll kind of proceed here, and I think it's a good segue into your bit. And so I'll turn over here to Sean just to kind of walk through really some of the components of the full stack application development platform. And so, Sean? I'll go over to you and we can kind of forge ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Luis. And maybe you could advance onto the next slide for me, please. Thank you very much. And no, sorry, the one with the map and the global coverage. So I think what's really striking about the OutSystems platform is the breadth and range of use cases and applications that we can create. And it's really not just in, specifically in the healthcare space, but really across any type of use case, any type of industry. We have customers and partners operating in, I think it's actually 90 countries plus at this point, so a little bit beyond the 87 that you see here, across multiple verticals, multiple industries. So really a broad range of experiences, a broad range of reusable components and tools from across the gamut of application development use cases that we can bring to bear and make available to our customers within the health tech sector. Crucially, I think, and a real differentiator for us, the platform is ubiquitously supported by implementation partners in every region, every geography, with deep experience and expertise on health tech use cases and enabling providers and hospital groups and other interested parties within our sector deploy the platform to most effect. To digitize your processes, right, and unlock some of those synergies. And we're supported by many hundreds of thousands of developers certified across the globe in terms of their proficiency on our platform. So we do truly have a global footprint that goes beyond just the world of health tech, but really that experience allows us to continue to iterate and refine our offerings in this particular space. If you could go to the next slide, please, Luis. To kind of back up that history and heritage, we are a 6-time Magic Quadrant leader in the low-code application platform space. So widely recognized and documented and lauded by customers and partners alike as being the premier low-code application platform with the highest rating on the ability to execute, bar none, across the industry. And so what does really translate to, what this really means in terms of the practical effect and outcomes that we can create from our customers is the ability to be 5 to 7 times more productive in terms of your development capability and development outputs. So whether you look at that as velocity and the ability to handle 5 to 7 times the amount of project and deliverables, or whether you look at that as the ability to compress the time on project and time on task for the existing backlog, it's all about helping the development teams and IT react quickly to those demands of the business. And if you can go to the next slide, please, Luis, we get a little bit more depth and detail, given that my focus here is more on the technical, going maybe one step deeper than the Magic Quadrant, the GTP, the Gartner for Tech Professionals write-up about OutSystems goes into a lot more detail. And it looks not just at the OutSystems platform, but really all of the main vendors who are in the segment and offering providers like yourself digital capabilities to extend applications and extend user experiences. And consistently across the Gartner for Tech Professional assessments, OutSystems scores top marks, highest across the board compared to all of those other solutions. The focus being on professional developer efficiency and agility. So it's not about creating a no-code experience whereby clinicians are able to create apps. It's about enabling IT to deliver on the backlog of capabilities so much faster. And interestingly, when you look at some of the other kind of, I guess, big names in the space, when you look at the specifics of the Gartner Technical Professional write-ups on the likes of Mendix and Microsoft, you find that they actually don't score so highly on the pro dev capabilities. They're very much kind of out the box on Rails. If you're comfortable in the Microsoft ecosystem, you want to extend Microsoft CRM, that's where some of those kind of tools have proven to be very, very effective. Where OutSystems truly shines, and it's in 2 areas, and I'll summarize the whole big matrix on the right-hand side to the ability to create very rapidly differentiated user experience and patient experiences that promote utilization and promote usage because these are consumer grade. combined with the ability to act as the connective tissue from a technology perspective within the enterprise. So the ability to sit on top of something like an Epic, for example, and allow you to create differentiated patient flows and physician flows, maybe a physician timetable optimization application or a scheduling application built on top of a core system, but utilizing OutSystems to make it a native mobile application to kind of drive utilization and that differentiated experience, are examples of very suitable and appropriate use cases and usages of the OutSystems platform. And if you can go to the next slide, Luis, we look at some of those evolutions, right, that OutSystems can support. And you know, there's this whole concept of digital transformation and extending old systems to the cloud. Organizations taking that kind of journey need to look beyond just the functional requirements of, can my cloud migration handle the workload, handle the use cases, but can it do it in a way that is secure, that has guaranteed uptime and SLAs around availability and confidentiality. And those non-functionals are really, really critical. And it's another area where OutSystems is particularly well adapted to a regulated industry like ours. Is we've already done the hard work in terms of achieving our certification and ISO certifications and verifications, our SOC 2 Type 2, our HIPAA compliance in terms of our hosting environment. So we become plug and play and an easy hosting environment choice for organizations looking to embark on a cloud migration journey as part of, you know, their health tech. We also look at the evolution of high performance low code starting to replace traditional code. And we see a huge amount, as Luis showed in some of those case studies, of really blue chip health tech organizations leaning heavily into the OutSystems capabilities and generating critical line of business applications built on top of OutSystems. So direct interactions with patients, direct interactions around scheduling, direct interactions around physician scheduling and workloads. These are the type of flows and experiences that organizations are building on OutSystems and building entirely using low code, such that these features and functionalities can be turned around in record time. And then ultimately, it's about doing, you know, all of these, delivering all of these capabilities in a way that's economical and efficient and makes the best use of resources, both financial and technology, right? So another benefit of partnering with an organization like OutSystems is we've already built in the economies of scale. So you don't need to, for example, spin up a whole CI/CD pipeline to support your kind of continuous integration, continuous deployments, because OutSystems already gives you that out of the box and ready to go. And by many estimates, we save typical organizations who are delivering applications around $2 million upfront in kind of setup costs when you look at building a pipeline, building the governance, building the security and deployment models that go into an effective health tech IT system.
Yeah, and Sean, just to add, I think to bring it back to the original theme up front, as far as you know, we look at these as really back to the coexistence and saying, understanding that there's been investments made. All, you know, meanwhile, we looked at some of the differentiating capabilities relative to some of the incumbents, whether it's ITSM or BPM or CRM. And we know that there's a shift to low code largely because of the lack of resources, which was on the poll as one of the primary concerns for the audience. Is how do you do that in a way that doesn't compound technical debt, that is manageable, and that doesn't hit walls or limitations as you effectively scale into other use cases? So low code for so many years, I think all of us is like, yeah, it's for small, maybe more departmental apps, less complex, not as mission critical. And what we're seeing is that, and I think why we're very motivated at OutSystems is, since our inception, we've been focused on that enterprise scalability. And so now we feel the rest of the market is coming along. And so oftentimes OutSystems is part of the stack at many other organizations where you do see Microsoft naturally and SAP and Salesforce and Workday and a lot of these other. I think what we are trying to focus in on is, as you look to drive integration across to those, that larger ecosystem, is that there's naturally certain things that are a good fit for those technologies and maybe a better fit for ours. And so I think there's no silver bullet. That is what needs to be explored and rationalized. And some of what we're trying to share with you are what are those common use cases that require integration, that are high frequency of change, that demand a very consistent and streamlined digital experience. Those are some of the things that where we like to say kind of we shine, and kind of notably back to some of the customer examples. And I know you're going to walk through some of that. I just wanted to tie it back that this is really build versus buy. And for what you want to build, there's a way to do that at scale with the resources you have, without necessarily throwing that development work over just to purely, a citizen play. We know that that's where the market is headed, but you still need to get your pro developers on board. You still need to get the most out of your core IT, right? While extending, right? You want to cater to the pro developer, but still extend it and help and support the augmentation of that traditional IT shop, right? To make sure you're meeting the demands of the business and you're doing that cost effectively. So
cost effectively and securely with appropriate governance. And I think it's a really good segue, Luis, into kind of this slide, which I think shows that alternative, right, where OutSystems necessarily sits. And on a spectrum or a scale of kind of the ability to customize and differentiate software products out of the box. At the low end, we've got pre-configured off-the-shelf CRM, ERP. These are your Salesforce, your SAP, your Epics, for example, that, whilst they're extensible, they're largely off the shelf. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got perfectly bespoke software crafted in the traditional manner using developers and using kind of hand code. And then you've got a lot in between, right? You've got low-code applications like extending Salesforce, extending ServiceNow through their drag and drop, or Power Apps to extend the Microsoft ecosystem. And so, where does OutSystems sit? Which vertical or which box does OutSystems play best in? And if you click forward, maybe a couple of times, you'll see that we're really an overlay, and I think it's borne out by some of those use cases. We cater to the professional developers. We can enable developers to create ab initio complex line of business applications that integrate into Salesforce and integrate into CRM and integrate into Epic using out-of-the-box connectors, removing the need for any API creation, removing the need for a lot of hand coding and hand crafting of API calls. We can effectively bring all of those integrations and all of those API calls and touch points with external systems as drag and drop nodes that can be interacted with graphically using, using a Visual Studio. And similarly, we kind of provide the same drag and drop and visual design capabilities to managing the backend and databases and entities, be able to model the business concepts using visual paradigms. So we can map accounts and patients and customers and patient journeys and have those data points populated from external systems and external databases. And then on top of that, we can create, as I mentioned, these pixel perfect UIs, mobile applications, native applications, web applications that from a standard palette of UI controls can guide a user through workflows, guide a clinician or a patient or any other user who would interact with those systems through a journey and through a set of use cases and workflows that you define, be it around optimizing of physician scheduling, be it around constant communication with patients and family members as those family members maybe go through a program of treatment, providing real-time updates. These are the types of use cases and outcomes that something like an OutSystems can deliver in kind of weeks, not months, right? By providing these integrations and UI elements as visual components that can be dragged and dropped onto a canvas and deployed, same day, right, to testers. So extraordinarily rapid, and it goes astride the extension use cases, maybe extending a portal on top of an Epic, right up to building something bespoke ab initio from scratch using OutSystems as the enabling technology. And really everything in between. So these are the alternatives. And Luis, if you want to maybe advance one or two more slides, I think here we go. Perfect. So all of that, capability, it's kind of built on the four pillars of our platform. And the pillars are held up by all of our infrastructure, all of our certifications, and all of our security credentials that we've put in place to provide this secure hosting platform and coding platform for a regulated industry like ours. So we have our PCI DSS, we have our SOC 2 Type 2, and our HIPAA. On top of that, we give the ability for every developer, effectively. We talk about developer productivity. Every single developer in the shop can be a full stack developer. From the same UI, they can create user interfaces, user experiences, as well as defining custom logic and workflow, as well as pulling data and information from upstream and downstream systems, billing systems, patient record systems, what have you. And remove and abstract away the complexity of coding integrations and coding API calls to those systems, and instead handing the tech team a visual way of interacting and building those experiences, but also giving you enough power and enough juice in the platform to be able to extend and integrate custom code, integrate IP that you've already created. If you already have modules, if you already have APIs and backend systems, and you simply want to create a differentiated experience, a pixel perfect experience on that, no problem. We can bring those wholesale into OutSystems. We can consume standard specifications like Swagger and just import, almost next finish your entire API into OutSystems and have that as a drag and drop kind of set of building blocks and Lego blocks, as Luis alluded to at the very beginning. We're full stack in that, from CI/CD to automated deployments to automated code scanning to automated security scanning. We provide all of the governance, all of the monitoring, all of the feedback out of the box natively in our platform. But we're also mature enough to provide all of the API hooks and all of the API calls to link into your existing CI/CD, setup. So if you use Jenkins or you use Azure DevOps, which I'm sure many of you do, rest assured that we can integrate seamlessly into those CI/CD platforms and push OutSystems code in the way that you're used to and familiar with doing already. And as we've alluded to, and where I think we see the most interest and support, in addition to the integrations from our health tech partners, is around these differentiated experiences, right? Building something that's consumer grade, customer facing on top of those critical back-end core health tech systems. That's where OutSystems really, really shines. We give you the ability to turn around differentiated workflows and proprietary workflows on top of what are often commoditized and standard back-end line of business systems.
Yeah, and just to add, and I know Sean's going to touch a little bit on some of the productivity and multipliers. When you think about sort of the components of the platform and what that does, it's really around the compression of the app development lifecycle, right? And so what we're seeing on average, and Sean will touch on this from a technical standpoint within sort of the app dev lifecycle, but overall is in some cases a third, if not a quarter, of the resources that are traditionally required to support that same type of application, right? Where you typically have to get sort of a project manager, QA, front end, back end developer, UI, UX, maybe designer. So all those common roles that sometimes are required. And when we think about the original challenge that was stated earlier around talent shortages, what we're finding is that very large development organizations are leveraging low code to get more app dev capacity and throughput and productivity, naturally because there's a big backlog. But even equally as important is a small development organization where maybe one or two folks are retiring, or how do you upskill, reskill them, and how do you generate more? Particularly as we think about the current climate conditions, what we're seeing is that there's a kind of renewed, or I should say, doubling down on our types of platform, because you start to not only think about the platform approach, but you think about the resource utilization from an IT perspective, the cost-effective solution with security that can start to then move quicker in launching, experiences and new products into the marketplace. As we know, just the dynamic of change is so fast-paced at the moment. But doing that cost-effectively, where you're now able to prototype in rapid delivery within weeks and months, as you heard earlier in the Prosmate video. So I think that attraction around doing something really addressing talent, time, and cost is what we're seeing, and that's crucial. That's driving some of the adoption rates that you're seeing in that growth rate year over year.
think it's exactly right, and we've got some of those stats here in terms of what are those typical multipliers, what is the force multiplier effect that you can expect to benefit from at the various stages of the software development lifecycle. Important to say your mileage will vary, and as anything else, it depends on your starting point, your maturity model, and the extent to which you embrace the low code paradigms, because it is a different way of kind of approaching the discipline of application development. But a natural question might be, well, how do you get 2 to 6x productivity, right, at the development stage? It's a very reasonable, it's a big number, right? It's a big claim to make. So how do we do it? Well, we're all about accelerators at every stage of the cycle, and we've applied 22 odd years of experience in this space, really, to every step of the developer's journey, from that initial design and wireframing. We have the ability to wholesale import your design language, like Figma or Sketch artifacts, directly into our development environment. The designs can be immediately implemented and built upon using an import feature, requiring really very little hand carving and hand creating of code. And all of those design artifacts are then templatized and made available for reuse by the subsequent developers and subsequent users of OutSystems. So it really delivers on that composability promise of kind of build once and deploy and reuse multiple times. That's one of a big driver of development productivity. We look at the development column there, the second kind of heading, and I'll draw your attention to the third kind of component down. There's 5,000 plus pre-built components available in our Forge to every OutSystems developer. And these components are accelerators that perform discrete tasks and integrations. We have one for Epic, for example. You can download the Epic connector from the Forge directly into your OutSystems application. And now you've got a drag and drop way to interact with the full set of Epic APIs. If you want to pull patient information or update information on Epic, we've got a pre-built connector to let you do that. If you then wanted to do docu-signing as part of your application, we've a pre-built connector for that. If you want to store securely documents in the cloud, we have an S3 connector, and so on and so forth. I won't list out all 5,000, but we have one for pretty much every system and every use case that you're likely to encounter. That's an accelerator. The fact that you can visually debug the code, no need for a developer to parse through logs and parse through nasty debuggers. They can visually watch the execution of their code take place, see visually where exceptions occur, and then fix those in real time, redeploy, and they're back in action. So across the board, we've applied automations and AIs to do things like code completion, to do things like suggesting the right modules, suggesting the missing dependencies that let us deliver on overall 5 to 7x developer productivity. But depending at the particular phase of the SDLC we want to talk about, it can be 6x or 2x, again, variable on your starting point and how much you lean in. But in any case, these are striking increases in the ability to tackle the backlog, to actually deliver product and experiences to the business at a rate that's significantly accelerated, whilst being able to train and onboard new developers very, very rapidly, because it's a very easy concept to pick up compared to traditional coding paradigms, which are tremendously more complicated than our approach.
Yeah, and Sean, I mean, very well said as far as breaking that down. And I think to what I hear from many of the CFOs and CIOs and the remaining C-suite when they look at this is it is really around giving more capacity, right? And then throughput for development teams, but while not suffering from quality assurance around the code that's being developed and security and scale. And so I think it's always the balancing act, right? We don't have enough time to get into governance, but naturally, hopefully as you walk away from the session today, you realize the power that OutSystems can provide. But as I say, with great power, comes great responsibility. And so part of this is we do have many best practices around large organizations and small in and outside of healthcare on what are those things around governance and standards and how do folks get on board in the platform. And so back to the talent shortage, part of this is really, okay, there's an opportunity to experiment and rapidly develop on this platform. But, this is something that we can provide further guidance around supporting that scale, supporting the governance, and what we see is really helping build out a digital factory. So I know we've just got a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to kind of end here, and then I don't know if we have enough time to open it up for questions, but I think hopefully you saw some of the things today that promote some, for lack of better terms, experimentation and maybe new considerations around what you see as low code and hopefully OutSystems as a potential platform that could support your needs. And so we've got a number of assets that are readily available around, whether it's the Forrester Total Economic Impact Report that you can look at common returns on customers that leverage the platform, or go through our more in-depth evaluation guide. So touching a lot of the things are, what are those customers and potential customers going through, and what should you be thinking about as you look to bring in this type of platform into your technology stack, and how to think through that. Even just scheduling a demo to kind of dig into a little bit deeper of some of the things that Sean touched on around, how do I do this visual development, and what are some of the sharp edges maybe, or some things to consider, and how do I leverage some of the existing skill sets from my technology teams to support that, because it is a little bit of a paradigm shift. And then we've got a number of different offers that even set up your own personal environment, and we have other services there that can help you walk through that to begin to look at some common use cases. So without further ado, I'll kind of wrap it up there, and then see, Sean, did you have any closing comments for the group today?
No, just to thank everybody for their participation. I hope that you all found it useful, and I hope you will reach out and schedule a demo, because we'd love to show you in a little bit more detail how the platform can deliver on some of the use cases that we discussed.
Thank you, Sean, and thanks to Lisa and the HIMSS for sponsoring this event. A pleasure to present in front of you. Hopefully you did get some nuggets that you can take back into your organization. And with that, with about 4 minutes left, I'll turn it back to you, Lisa, to see if there's any questions or comments.
I don't have any questions in the Q&A or the chat as of right now, and I do apologize again for the hiccup with the polls. They did reset as soon as I hit two things. So I want to thank everyone, as Luis and Sean for joining us today to present to our attendees. The CP-HIMSS credit will be sent to you as the registered attendee, along with a PDF of this presentation if you want more details. And there is a short survey as you exit today. So if you are looking for more information from Sean and Luis, there is a place there to put your information in there, so I can put you in touch with them. And don't forget that we do have an evening social at HIMSS 23. So please look for that on our website. And I believe YouTube will also be at HIMSS 23. So they'll hopefully look for you guys as well. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and have a great work week. Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Take care all.
Bye now.